Back to you, Corey, for virtual machines.
Whew. How's everyone doing after that last one? Pretty good? We're getting into a little bit more exciting stuff now. We're going to take a look at Windows Azure Virtual Machines, and this is actually a really interesting offer because basically a lot of people from the start, when we brought out cloud services in the past, they were like, well, what about the workloads that need persistent storage underneath it? And this is our answer to it. Basically, we're providing a great set of tooling around virtual machines. So basically what we're looking to offer is a continuous offering between the private cloud, which is your internal infrastructure, and the public cloud, which is infrastructure as a service sitting in Windows Azure. So basically what we're looking here is we want to support the key applications that are running in your servers today, along the lines of SQL Server, maybe SharePoint if you're doing SharePoint today, but we're looking to make it easier for you to just push those pieces of your internal infrastructure into the cloud and allow you to be able to do so, because that wasn't offered in the past. So a little bit about IaaS workloads. It's all about the applications. So like I said, we want to bring your line of business apps into a nice persistent storage, bring them out of your data centers if they need to be, and get them into the cloud. We're also looking at different sorts of infrastructure that you may have. If you want to have a nice distributed area for your source control system, maybe you want to stand up TFS in the cloud, it gives you the ability to do so. You also have the ability to set up the database, SQL Server, and basically that's one of the demos today is how to show, how to get Windows Server provisioned straight out of our gallery. So we actually provide it as a nice, simple way to get right out and running with SQL Server in the cloud. Basically, we're looking at all of the different things that are going to bring you back up and running into the things that you do today into the cloud, and also connecting hybrid applications through the virtual network offerings that are kind of interjoined with the virtual machines. So this will allow you to do things like setting up a hardware VPN on your internal site and connecting those applications or applications that you have running in the cloud to databases sitting on premise. The image is available at the preview time frame, which is right now. They're up and running. We have Windows Server 2008 R2, Windows Server 2008 R2 with SQL Server 2012. And that's the nice offering that we have that basically has everything up and running for you straight through the gallery, as well as a preview or release candidate version of SQL Server 2012, so you can stand that up, see what the next version's like, or as soon as it's ready to go live, stand up some Windows Server 2012 instances and see how your applications migrate to them, because it's all about standing things up quickly, understanding how you're going to leverage the tools that you have at hand, and then bringing them back down if they don't quite suit your needs, or keeping the infrastructure up there and just providing it at a really rapid pace. On the Linux side of things, we provide 4 different operating systems. We have OpenSUSE, we have SUSE Enterprise Edition, so if you want to step up to the enterprise level. We also have Ubuntu, which is a very common Linux distribution, and CentOS, which is right up there with the top listing as well. But we're providing all of these things through partners, so they have, we have people that are professionals that are running Linux on a regular basis, providing these images for us to make it easier to offset the load and just get Linux up and running in the cloud. So we'll just switch over to a quick demo here. And we'll just take a look at how we can get up and running with virtual machines in Windows Azure. So we're just going to hit New. We're going to hit Virtual Machine. We'll create one from the gallery, and we'll just quickly go over here straight into the SQL Server image that we have and click on Next. So basically, this provides us a nice little interface to go through and start setting up a virtual machine instance. We want you to be able to provide the names that you want for your machines. So you'll be able to set up every part of the step all around. And this is funny because we now offer MySQL support, so the typical MySQL doesn't really work. So I'm going to say my initial SQL demo. Provide a password, and then we're going to create this here. We have two options here at the top. We have a standalone virtual machine, and we have the ability to connect to an existing virtual machine. And a little bit later on, I'll show you what the underlying infrastructure is below the virtual machines. But right now, we'll just click through the standalone virtual machine, and we'll just bring this online. It was CF demo. We can provision that to an already created storage account or create a new one. And then we can just select the region that we want as well. So we'll say East US. Availability sets we'll get into a little bit later on, so we'll just pass right over that. And basically this is going to go out and it's going to stand up that image sitting in the background and start setting up our SQL Server instance under the covers as well as it starts to spin up and go. While we let that spin up, just kind of take a quick look out back at the slides, because it'll take a few minutes. But basically, you know, we're trying to get you started and think about things in a different way. So we provide the management portal. I mentioned earlier there's PowerShell, so you can script out your environments, and you can do this today. Virtual machines are an added set to the PowerShell commandlets. You also have the RESTful APIs that we provide to all of our services. So if if you're using a language that we currently don't support, or you want to create your own management tasks, maybe a way of providing multiple steps in a single script, you could fire a request right against the RESTful API and get things up and running quickly. We also support obviously we talked about the two operating systems, but Linux VMs and Windows VMs support the existing stack, the full range of sizes from extra small all the way up to extra large, and it all depends on the workload that you're trying to pull through. So essentially, you're looking at what your application is going to consume, what kind of I/O you need coming out of your VM. So if you're looking for a SQL instance, you might want to scale it up to a little bit larger instance for the extra throughput, or alternatively, the extra storage that you're going to need underneath to hold all that data from your application. And then basically, we're running a lot of this stuff off of the existing infrastructure. So the disks that you're saving, all of these images are getting pushed out and stored within Windows Azure Storage. So you can go out and you can take a look using your favorite storage tool. I use Cloudberry myself, but there's Sarah Broad tools. There's a couple other third-party vendors that are providing great tooling to actually browse through your Windows Azure Storage. It's taken just a little bit longer than expected, but we'll slip back in here, and I'll show you maybe one that I've provisioned already. So we do have the ability to actually go through and RDP directly into the Windows version of the VM. So let's just take a quick look at this. Make sure you accept all the security certificates coming through. But as you can see, we're booted nicely into a Windows Server 2012 image. If we look at Windows Explorer here, we can see that we do have a number of disks sitting here. Let's just full screen that. We'll just zoom in a little bit. I can't zoom in sitting on the server. But basically, the operating system sitting on C, as it does today. And one other thing is there's a temporary storage, which is the D drive. Thing to note about the D drive is it's actually the only drive that isn't persistent. So if you're looking to store, website files or images that people upload, you probably don't want to put it into D, because whenever your role recycles or your VM gets moved over to a different slot within Windows Azure, that stuff's actually just going to disappear. So the reason it's there is that D drive is actually the underlying hard drive sitting on the VM within Windows Azure. So it's if you think of how cloud services, if you're used to that, it would basically be that local storage disk that would just clear itself out every time something moved off. If you're not used to that yet, you'll probably end up in a scenario where you'll find that out later on, because of the cloud services didn't have that persisted layer. We just kind of threw out whatever was in that storage drive, and it still happens today, but we've provided the ability to add in different storage on top of that. So to look at that, we can actually, at the bottom of the screen here, see an attach button, and what this will do is allow us to attach an empty disk, so we can actually say, you know, how big of a disk do we need? We'll provide a terabyte drive for us, and basically this is going to go out, create a new page blob in storage, allow us to save files out, and basically when we jump back into our VM here, hopefully it creates this relatively quickly, we'll actually be able to see this drive come online. We might have to go into the server manager here and actually give it a drive letter. So if we look at, not server manager, we'll just quickly here, min tools, storage. Oops. Those were the days when you could just right-click on computer and select the Manage tab. Excuse me for a second. There we go. Disks. And once we actually have our storage, there we go. There's our 1 terabyte drive sitting at the bottom there. And we can just right-click on here, initialize that new drive. It's going to go through, format it all, and we can actually go and create a new volume on top of it. And basically this will step us through actually creating a drive letter for it and everything. I'm just going to skip right over that because we'll have another instance sitting in the background to switch over to later. So that gets us up and running. Let's just switch back to our slides. There we go. So as you see, we just created something very simple, and we use a gallery sitting in the portal, but we do actually allow you to bring your own server or bring your own VHD. And there's a couple of ways to do this. You can provide it as either an image, and an image needs to be sysprepped. So does anyone know what sysprep is? A few people? So basically what sysprep is going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to generalize your disk. So it's going to take all the computer names, strip that off, and just give it a very base, very friendly way to import that into Hyper-V or into Windows Azure and provide that, or provide a way to inject new system names in to bring your image online. So you could do that, or if you just want to go ahead and provision everything, like I said earlier, we give you the ability in the portal to name all your VMs which you want them to be named. So it makes sense for us to allow you to provide VHDs with the names that you would like. And we'll you can just provide a nice disk. Just upload it with CS Upload, which is a command line tool that's part of the Windows Azure tools. And basically what this will do is upload everything as is, and you'll be able to run a single instance of that disk using whatever workload that you have sitting on it. So it just basically goes through a simple process of creating that VHD, uploading the VHD that uses the CS Upload tool that's going directly into blob storage. And then you can create that as a disk or image like I described earlier. which just gives you the means to bring, like, that's how it separates them in the portal. So when you go and you click up that gallery, you'll have the ability to select, that nice repeatable image that you've provided, or you can just bring up that one instance of the fully provisioned installed disk that's ready to go. So doing things from the cloud, we basically provide you a base VHD from a standardized portal a standardized storage account that we have set up. We just kind of push that into your Windows Azure storage account. We start booting that disk up. We allow you to do any kind of customization. Then we actually go through, if you do a capture within the portal, we go through and rerun that sysprep operation, generalizes the disk for you. We create that capture, and it gets stored out into your storage account as an image. Then we delete that existing disk that you've brought up, just so you don't need that version anymore now that you have the generalized version that you can use as a repeatable disk sitting within the cloud. And then you have the ability to go out and start spinning up instances. We also wanted to provide the means for you to go out and bring the images that you have sitting on-prem, but we want to look at the inverse of that and actually bringing something that you might have provisioned in the cloud and bring it back into your infrastructure. Just in case, business is a little bit slower and you don't need to burst out to the cloud anymore, you can bring that workload back into your existing infrastructure, run it in-house for a little bit, and then when things pick back up again, you can burst back out to the cloud. And essentially, because everything's sitting in blob storage, all you're doing is a simple download operation against that VHD that's sitting out there, and you're bringing it directly into Hyper-V and just spinning things back up from there. So looking at persistent disks, James explained earlier on how you have that one primary image and then the backup duplicate images sitting in there. So all of your virtual machines are backed up by default, which is great because the last thing you want to do is lose one of your instances that's sitting out there. And then for disaster recovery, you can keep that geo-replication enabled. And what that's going to do is push it over to another data center within a different region and keep those duplicates kind of sitting there. So the one caveat to this is you do actually end up paying for the storage to keep that replica out there. So if that's, if cost is a big thing for you, just turn off geo-replication and you'll have the 3 versions that are sitting within your one data center. But basically that gives you the nice, easy, and flexible way of making sure that it's out there. However, this doesn't take away the need for you to keep backups on site. So this could provide a nice way for you to keep your images backed up in the cloud, but you do want to make sure, just in case something were to happen to one of your replicas sitting within Windows Azure, that you have something backed up on premise, just so not everything's at a loss. So this shows that if the virtual machine becomes unstable, it's going to switch over to a new VM. It's just going to switch over to a new VM sitting in that cluster, and it's still actually pointing to the same disk sitting in storage that it was using previously. It just failed that one instance down. Windows Azure Fabric Controller has brought it over, powered it up on a new box, and just basically pushed the load over to the new server. Looking a little bit at the virtual machine sizes and storage, you have the range of extra small all the way to extra large. You want to make sure that you're taking advantage of the CPUs you use. So if you're using something like the parallel libraries in .NET, you're going to want to skip all the way up to a medium instance because you're not going to get any advantage just running everything on a single core, right? You're parallelizing it out to multiple processors. You need those multiple processors in order to actually get the advantage. So if you're looking at heavy workloads, spinning up to a medium instance is going to give you the ability to move out to multiple cores. Coming all the way up to an extra large, you're giving yourself the ability to attach 16 terabytes of data in data disks to your VM, as well as providing additional bandwidth and memory on top of the 8 cores that the extra large is going to provide you. So looking at disks and images, essentially a lot of the base OS images we have for Microsoft partners are providing them to us. We manage the set of virtual machines that we're running, like the Windows Server ones. But basically, we've gone out and already created the images and syspressed them all for your use. And then you just go, and on top of that, providing any additional data disks that you want. One thing to keep in mind about OS images versus disks is you don't really want any data sitting on your OS images. So if you're deploying applications, good practice is to spin up a data disk and have your application pushed out onto that data disk, and then just change the default configs in IIS to look to that data disk for your website instead of sitting it in the iNet pub folder. The reasoning for this being is you basically have that persistent disk sitting out there, and the last thing you want to do is have an operating, or like some